to start off, a lot of this will make sense if you guys understand what EcoScraps does. So we collect food waste from grocery stores, places like Walmart, Costco, food banks, wholesale produce providers, and it's the food that they otherwise would have thrown away. And instead of paying the landfill to throw it away, they pay us to take it. We then compost it, and we then sell it as a premium organic soil amendment, a lot like Scott's Miracle-Gro. So we get paid to receive our raw materials. Through our composting process, we're able to reduce methane emissions, so we're able to get carbon credits, which we're then able to sell, and then we sell our finished product. So the thing that I think is really cool is we've turned our raw materials into a revenue center, we've turned our production facility into a revenue center, and we've turned our finished products into a revenue center. So it all started, I guess it was the end of winter semester 2009, just finished with finals, and to reward myself, I went to Maggleby's Fresh to eat their all-you-can-eat French toast. So I got my first serving, I ate all of it, went back, got my second plate, had one or two slices, and I was full, so I decided to throw everything else away. And I was surprised at how much food I was throwing away. I looked in the garbage can. I was surprised at how much French toast was in there. And looking around, there were all sorts of, everyone else was throwing their food away. And I was so surprised that, half an hour, 40 minutes earlier, I just spent $8 to buy this French toast that I was then throwing away. And I also thought it was very interesting that Maggleby's Fresh was then going to pay Waste Management or BFI or Allied Waste, some waste hauler, they were going to pay them to then throw away all of this. So typically, we buy stuff. We like to get stuff. And there are very, very few things in life where we will actually pay someone to take it away from us. So I wanted to see if you could reorganize garbage so that instead of having to buy your raw materials, someone paid you to receive your raw materials. So I went back to my apartment and started looking up food waste. For no other reason than I was interested in the fact that we paid to throw away garbage, and I decided on food waste because I was just eating French toast. And so I learned that every year in America, we throw away over 30 million tons of food waste. To put that into perspective, that's enough to fill the football stadium once every 3 days, completely full, with nothing but our wasted food. It is a ton of food. We spend over $50 billion a year in just throwing away our food. Roughly about 40% of everything that we grow in America, we end up throwing away. So there's just a ton of food, and it's very expensive. Every year, the price of garbage goes up. In Ventura County, just this last year, the price of garbage increased by 500%. Here in Utah, it's increasing. Utah, we have lots of land. Most Mormons don't really care about the environment, so we like having lots of landfills. We accept garbage from, all other states. So the price of garbage in Utah has been increasing, 15 to 20% every single year, but it always goes up. And so I was very surprised at how much we were spending to get rid of stuff. And then I also learned about all the environmental impacts that food waste has. I thought, if you throw an apple away, it's just going to turn into dirt in the landfill. It's not that bad. It's not the same thing as like throwing a battery away or, other sorts of garbage that you should recycle. But as food rots, it emits methane. Methane emissions from landfills, specifically from food waste, produce roughly about 9% of all the pollution that we generate as a country. To put that into perspective, all the cars that we drive on the road produce 12% of all the pollution. So our food that we throw away almost pollutes as much as all of our driving, which I'm still trying to wrap my head around that. I served my mission in Puerto Rico, and in Puerto Rico, for whatever reason, they didn't have garbage disposals. So instead of putting all of their food down the sink, they would compost it. So I was somewhat familiar with compost because of that. I grew up working in my yard, just in our garden, so I was somewhat familiar with soil amendments and chemical fertilizers. So in the gardening market, you have chemical-based fertilizers, which are fairly expensive, very high in nutrients, but chemical fertilizers will kill the soil's ecosystem, so it creates a dependence on chemical fertilizers. And that's one big reason why lots of people like organic gardening. But on the organic side, everything is manure-based. So the nutrients have already been digested by you or the cow or the chicken. And so the idea was, I wonder if you took food that hadn't been digested by something and you composted it, if you couldn't get the same level of nutrients as chemical-based fertilizers. And so I started experimenting. I would wait until restaurants and grocery stores would close, and I would go dumpster diving. And I started by blending up all sorts of food in my kitchen. Once I outgrew that, I moved to just an empty spot of land next to my apartment. And we were composting in garbage cans. I think at one point we had upwards of like 40 garbage cans with different types of compost. We would compost everything from Panda Express, Olive Garden, Denny's, grocery stores, a bakery, and it was all just trial and error. The compost from Panda Express, it looked like very nice compost. We planted a plant in it, and you could just watch the plant die. I think within 12 hours it had completely wilted, and we tried giving it chemical fertilizers and everything, and we just couldn't bring it back. So, some of the compost didn't do what we wanted it to, but, potentially could serve some other purpose. Other compost, it was not so bad, not so great. And we stumbled upon a recipe of just fruits and vegetables that had close to double the nutrients as the leading chemical fertilizer. So we were pretty excited about that. So we took that, we took a garbage can to a nursery and showed them the dirt that we'd made. And we said, this is the soil analysis that we ran. You can see that it has, double the nutrients of other chemical fertilizers, 15 times the nutrients of other manure-based composts, organic composts. Is this something you'd be interested in? And they said, yeah, that looks really interesting. If you can make it in large quantities, I'm sure we could sell it. And so that was January of 2010. So we started working on a business plan. And at the same time, the typical compost will take anywhere from 6 to 9 months to make. And if you try to run a business where your inventory takes 9 months, it's really, really hard to manage that cash flow. So we started working on shrinking the composting time. So we got it down to about 3 weeks, which is still, to this date, we can compost faster than any other company in America, which is pretty cool because we figured it all out through trial and error in my apartment. So once we figured that out, we decided, well, we need more food waste. So how do we get more food waste? We could go around and talk to all these individual stores, and that seemed like a lot of work. So we decided, hey, Costco has the largest produce section that I've been in Utah, so why don't we call Costco Corporate and see if we can get them on board. So we cold called Costco Corporate, got their director of sustainability on the phone, pitched him the idea. He said, I like it, sounds interesting, why don't you do a pilot program with the Orem Costco? So we got the Orem Costco on board, so now we needed a place to compost all of this. So do you guys recognize this building? It's over by Seven Peaks. So in our composting process, we like to do it indoors. At this time, we didn't have very much money, so I didn't want to go out and rent a building. And you'll be surprised, very few landlords want you composting inside of their building. So we found out who owned this building. It's abandoned, and we started composting in the inside of it. So this was our first warehouse. It cost me maybe $200 a month. So we were getting all this food from Costco. An individual Costco can throw away about 1 ton of produce every single day. So we were composting that. Once we worked out a lot of the kinks with Costco, with the Orem Costco, we decided, hey, we want to get all the other Costcos on board. We want to grow this. We had more sales orders than we had compost. So we wanted to make more product. So I called up the director of sustainability at Costco Corporate and said, I feel like we've worked out all the kinks. Can we bring on all the other Costcos in Utah? And he said, fantastic. He said, is space going to be an issue? And I said, no, we're getting a new building. We'll be fine. He misunderstood. He thought we had a new, larger building. So he said, I'll be in Utah next Thursday anyways. I'd like to see your new facility. And if it, passes my inspection, you can bring on all the other Costcos. And so I said, oh, okay, fantastic. I'll email you the address. I think it's up in Salt Lake someplace. I can't remember the address off the top of my head. So then we had a week to find a new facility because I did not want to take him to the abandoned building next to Seven Peaks. So Thursday morning, it's Thursday morning and we still don't have a facility. It's really hard to find the right type of building that you can compost in, where the landlord's okay with you composting inside of it, where rent's not too much. Thursday morning, we had found a building that we thought might work. So I called the landlord and said, can I come get the keys from you so that I can come just take a tour? You don't need to give me a tour. He was okay because it's just a big empty warehouse. So I went up, I got the keys, we unlocked the building, we rented a lot of equipment, trucked up all of our dirt, and set up shop inside of this building that we hadn't leased yet. So I picked up Todd from the airport, took him to our facility, gave him the tour of our new wonderful facility, walked him through all the equipment. We made it look like a very complicated process. He was there for 15 minutes, said he loved it. I took him out to lunch. As I was at lunch with him, everybody else was cleaning the facility and returning all the equipment so that we could return the keys to the landlord. So the next week, we did end up leasing that building. This is the building. It was a 5,000 square foot warehouse. You can see a big pile of food outside. That's about half of the amount of food that we're going through on a daily basis right now. It's upwards to 35 tons every single day here in Utah. And so we were making even more product, and we were able to make even more sales. We were able to sell through Costco. We were in more independent garden centers and nurseries than really any of our competitors. We decided to open up a facility about the same size in Arizona, January of 2011. And we could always sell faster than we could make the compost. And I don't know if I have a picture. No. This building so it's 50 feet deep and 100 feet long. And it was we could go up to about 12 feet high. So we had compost from, 100 feet long, 12 feet high, and about 40 feet deep. I mean, this thing, you walked in, and it was just filled with dirt. We stayed in here as long as we could, and it's actually fairly impressive. In this 5,000 square foot facility, we were able to turn out as much compost as a 20-acre composting facility run by the state of Utah, just because of how quick our composting cycle is. So we were able to make a lot of compost, but we could sell even more. So we moved from Salt Lake to Orem, and in Arizona we moved from Tempe to Phoenix. And this is our Phoenix facility. You can fit a football field in here. It's close to a 40,000 square foot facility. I mean, it's huge. And it's allowing us to make even more product and make even more sales. Just earlier this month, we just got into Home Depot, and our product is selling very well, a whole lot faster than what we were anticipating. So we're trying to continue to scale up. So throughout that time, it very much was bootstrapped. probably for the first 6 months, I had another job, and I'd take all the money that I was earning. I was working at a consulting firm. I would take all that money and use it to fund EcoScraps. We won some money from the BYU social venture competition. Because we were able to get sales so quickly, we were able to show those sales to banks and whatnot, and we got a few bank loans really early on. And so we really have bootstrapped all of this, and we've moved facilities way too many times. Hopefully we'll be able to stay in this facility for a few years before we outgrow it again. And so, like they said earlier this year, we were named one of the top 25 social businesses, most promising social businesses in America. When you think about, being in my apartment 2 years earlier, blending up, old Panda Express food and trying to compost it, to this, it's amazing how far we've come. Like you said, we were on the cover of Inc. magazine. And this one's probably my favorite out of all the PR that we've gotten. We were on the Discovery Channel. So Donald Trump explained EcoScraps and what we were all about and what we were doing, which I thought was pretty cool. I've hence been labeled the trash tycoon. So that's really, that's the story of how EcoScraps got started and how we've grown. One thing that's helped us a lot is we do pitch ourselves and we present ourselves as a social business. We're a for-profit business and we're driven by making money like any other business. But at the very core of our business model is environmental responsibility. And the reason we like it is the more money we make, just how our business model is set up, to grow our business, we have to take more food, which is taking more food out of the landfill. And we're able to quantify the environmental impact that we have. We can quantify how much methane we've reduced. So because of that, like with Home Depot, for example, if you talk to most people that sell into Home Depot, it's taken them anywhere from 12 to 24 months from when they met with the buyer to when their product was actually in the Home Depot store. We were able to meet with one of the senior executives at Home Depot because we pitched ourselves as a sustainable, socially responsible business that will help Home Depot be more green. He put us in contact with our buyer, and from our first meeting with our buyer to when product was in Home Depot was 2 months, which makes us the fastest company to get our product into Home Depot that anyone at Home Depot knows about. And so we've been able to accelerate our sales cycle exponentially by staying out of your typical sales channels and working through the corporate social responsibility aspect of the companies. That's how we were able to work with Costco. Really was our first client. So we've been able to sell ourselves to these fairly large companies, and we've been able to work that system very, very quickly because of the socially responsible side of EcoScraps. So are there any questions about how we got started or what we do? Yeah. No, I want to make money. And in our space, we meet with some very interesting people. People care about the environment a lot. There are people that care about doing good socially a lot. I mean, to the point where it's no longer rational. And we've always been very clear that we are about making money. We negotiate very hard. We want to drive as much money to our bottom line as possible. And we feel fine doing that because the faster we can grow, the more sales we're making, the more product that we're bringing in that we're taking out of the landfill. And so we do occupy a unique spot in the world of social entrepreneurship, social ventures. You would have a hard time you'd have a very hard time arguing that we are any less socially conscious or responsible than a lot of, non-profit companies, yet we are completely driven by our profits. Yeah?
Yeah, are you guys aware of how much of the disposed food, like nationwide, have you guys even cut a fraction of that being, putting in landfills?
No, so in America, we throw away 30 million tons, and I haven't looked at these numbers for maybe a month, but to date, since we've started, we've recycled, probably right around 18 million pounds. So you have 30 million tons, we're at 18 million pounds. So, we're maybe at 0.25%.
Do you guys know what your potential, how much that could actually, if you guys capped it, how much you take out of landfill?
So produce, so right now we mostly just take produce waste, your fruits and vegetables. And everything that we take is pre-consumer, so it has to be segregated. It gets segregated at the grocery store. So when the grocery store throws it away, it's just fruits and vegetables. So like at a restaurant, after it's been on your plate, the fruits and vegetables are mixed in with the meats and the dairies and all your sauces, and it's really hard to separate that. So right now, we just take fruits and vegetables, and we only take pre-consumer waste. So pre-consumer produce waste is roughly about 25% of all the food that gets thrown away. So if we were taking all of that, in every single state, we could divert 25% of that 30 million tons.
Did you guys find a way to patent the process, or is it just kind of a secret sauce for you guys?
So we have filed for a patent. So we have a patent pending on our methodology, on our recipe, and the process that we use to compost. I personally think patents aren't worth very much because someone could knock me off and I don't have the money to sue them. So, until I have enough money to sue everyone that's infringing on my patent isn't really worth all that much. So I think it's smart to protect your IP, but I think you're lying to yourself if you say, well, because I have a patent, no one can knock me off. So, yeah.
Have you ever tried or even thought of selling your idea or the process to another company?
We have, yep. Right now we're meeting with maybe a dozen individuals that will buy licenses, so they'll buy our trademarks and the information in our patent to be able to do this within a restricted geographic area. Here in Utah, quite frankly, was probably the worst place for us to start our business. Since we're at BYU, Mormons are cheap, and Mormons don't care about the environment. And it's frozen, the ground is frozen 6 months out of the year. And so people don't care about recycling. The national average of recycling is 40% of all waste ends up getting recycled. Here in Utah, it's 7%. I mean, Utah, I think on a list of green states, we're number 48. So we very much are at the bottom. But then also the ground is frozen 6 months out of the year. So you're not buying anything for your garden half of the year. So our sales are very, very seasonal here in Utah, and our prices are lower here in Utah because of people's attitudes towards environmental responsibility. But in some place like Arizona or California, where you're able to grow 12 months out of the year, with the same size of a facility, we're able to double our revenue. And so we've kind of cut the United States in half. Anywhere that has a growing season of 8 months or longer, we want to open up a facility there. Anywhere that has a growing season less than 8 months, we've decided that we'll just sell what we know in our process, and we'll leverage our sales accounts and our relationships with waste haulers to let other people do that in those markets.
So in essence, you're franchising in the least profitable
We are licensing. So very similar to a franchise. With a franchise, they buy an operating system like McDonald's. You buy the store layout. You buy all the systems that we have. We are only selling people our trademarks, so our brand, and also how we make compost within 3 weeks. But it's completely up to them to follow it or not. Whereas in a franchise, you have to follow all of the operating systems. Yeah?
How much of your process was straight up trial and error, and how much was like research and already been done, like labs and published and things like that?
So we have read just about every article that there is to read on composting, on every type of composting, on every type of technology surrounding how to deal with food waste. And so we took that and kind of broke it down and decided, it was after reading all of that, we decided, well, the next step for us was determining what we thought were the 3 or 4 biggest areas that affected the quality of compost and how quickly it composted. And then from there, it was all trial and error, but having some knowledge surrounding what other people had done. Yeah?
Are you working on getting another compost and other food scraps and stuff?
Right now, we are exploring baked goods. So there are unique challenges with composting cakes and donuts. So yeah, that's what we're working on. And then after that, kind of over the next 12 to 24 months, we want to figure out how to compost baked goods, and then we want to figure out how to deal with post-consumer waste. It depends on the market size. So, I don't know. You could, for the state of Ohio, there's an upfront fee of $125,000 plus a royalty for every bag that you sell.
Talk a little bit about your carbon credit and selling those, how that works.
Yeah. So, who knows what a carbon credit is? Anyone? Okay, so a couple of people. So in Europe, they've passed cap and trade. So companies are only allowed to pollute X amount before they start getting fined. Or they can purchase the right to pollute from another company. And so we are essentially a pollution negative company. If food were to rot, it'd emit methane. Since through our composting process, we're able to eliminate that. So, through the normal course of the life cycle of food, it'd be rotting and emitting methane. So we generate those credits. So we can then sell the right to another company to pollute however much pollution we kept out of the environment. And so here in America, we haven't passed cap and trade. And so 1 carbon credit, it's 1 ton of pollution, in Europe will be sold for anywhere between $35 to $75, depending on that market. Here in the U.S., it's sold for between $3 and $7. So the market's, much, much better in Europe. That carbon credit, you then get that, if we were to sell a carbon credit here in the U.S., we'd then get that $7 every year for the next 10 years because of how people smarter than me have decided that once you put pollution in the air, it's hurting the environment for roughly 10 years. And so you then get that revenue stream for the next 10 years. Does that make sense? Yeah. Yeah, so when we started all of this, we thought it was nothing more than an interesting business plan. So we put together a team to write the business plan. We maybe had 8 people working on our business plan, and we knew 5 of them, even if things took off and it had legs, we knew 5 of them wouldn't be interested in continuing on. They wanted to be a part of the business plan. So we did that. Around the time, around the end of the semester, we were making sales, we were making compost, we were picking up from Costco. So there were 3 of us from the group that wrote the business plan. And then we probably, I guess we hired 1 part-time person to start working on the compost and another part-time person to drive around and pick up the produce waste. And it's then just grown from there. So now we have 22 employees. Any other, yeah?
So how are you guys eco-friendly? You saw your carbon points up to people, other companies? Or how did it determine if you're eco-friendly company? Is it just because you guys don't produce?
So no. So the actual product, so one, by using, I guess the product itself is eco-friendly. Forget about the process, how we make it. Most of the soil here in Utah is dead. We've used so many chemicals. All of our chemical fertilizers are all derived from petroleum. So in some sense, it really is like pouring a bottle of oil on your garden. Just chemically, we've reformatted the nutrients so that the plant can take up those nutrients without any live bacteria in the soil. So if you were to stop fertilizing things in Utah, stuff wouldn't grow. Our compost has all the beneficial bacteria and very high levels of nutrients and a really high organic content. So you're able to rebuild the soil's ecosystem. So in that aspect, you're restoring the nutrients and restoring the soil's ecosystem. So from that aspect, the product is very eco-friendly. A lot of manure-based composts will carry E. coli and other diseases, and so that can then be passed on to your food, which then has other ramifications when you're feeding someone a tomato that has E. coli growing in it. So it's just it's a much safer product than chemical-based fertilizers or manure-based composts for both people and the planet.
Because of that, you sell that for a lot more than other products?
No, so we very much pitch ourselves as a sustainable company. So part of that, it's not sustainable for you to buy organic produce if organic produce costs a whole lot more. You're just not going to do it. So on purpose, we've priced ourselves just slightly higher than the average price point. So when you're deciding whether you want to buy a chemical-based product or our product, we're less than the chemical-based product. And so we've looked at our price points and we've made a very conscious decision to, be priced at just slightly higher than average. So we're not the cheapest product, we're not the most expensive, but it's much more sustainable for you as a consumer to buy our product than really any other organic product, and in many cases, chemical-based products.
So the companies pay you guys to get that?
So initially, companies were paying us to pick up their produce, and we had trucks going around and picking up their produce. We don't want to be, and we didn't want to be in the waste hauling business. So we've since made relationships with waste haulers like Waste Management, Allied Waste, Ace Disposal, Quest Recycling. So they're the ones actually picking up the waste. So a grocery store will pay Waste Management to haul their garbage. And then Waste Management pays us to drop the produce off at our facility. And we just charge them less than what they'd be charged at the landfill. Any other questions?
Do you have a quality control system in place?
We do. So with regards to the product, we have to make sure that the nutrient content is within certain bounds, that the carbon to nitrogen ratio is within certain levels, that the moisture content's within certain levels, that bacteria levels are within a certain range.
Do you just take samples periodically, or what?
Yeah, so we take samples from all of our piles once a week.
Have you ever had an unsuccessful batch, so to say? You go after testing and stuff, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's really hard. If you think about what we're doing, imagine building something, I don't know, imagine building a chair and never getting the same size or types of pieces of wood. I mean, we're getting people's garbage. There's no control of what percentage is going to be tomatoes versus cabbage versus cucumbers. Even just from fruits to vegetables, it's different every single day. There have been times in Arizona where we have literally, so this summer I went to Wendy's and I ordered a hamburger, and they wouldn't give me tomatoes because all the tomatoes had frozen. All the tomatoes that we get from Utah are grown in Arizona. So all of those frozen tomatoes that Wendy's didn't have and couldn't sell, we were getting at our facility. So we were literally getting semi-trucks a day of nothing but tomatoes. We had hundreds and hundreds of big watermelon boxes of nothing but tomatoes. And then the next week, we got nothing but oranges. Then the week after that, we got nothing but grapefruits. So, there are some huge benefits in the fact that we are dealing with garbage, and people pay us to take our raw materials. But a huge downside to that is we have very little control over what we are actually receiving. So that's actually been one of the larger challenges that we've had to figure out how to resolve.
Did you try any other business startups or ideas before this?
I've always liked organizing things. I've liked doing stuff. When I was little, I grew up a little bit in Oregon, so one of my friends wasn't LDS. And so instead of a lemonade stand, we took all of his father's beer. We sold beer for 25 cents. And really ever since then, and how successful that was, I've always done small things like that. In high school, I'd put on events and raise money for nonprofit groups. I never really had a typical job in high school. I would just figure out ways to make money for myself. But in actual business, no. Yeah.
In your opinion, what could help shape people's attitudes about environmentalism in Utah versus other states? Like, what's the difference that you think could be changed?
I think it's all education. In Utah, we've seen in working with these stores, as we educate them about, how they can, what their actions are doing to the environment and why it's bad, we have seen people change their attitudes. Really, most people that aren't aware of the environment and the damage that food does, throwing an apple away, how does that hurt the environment? But when you explain the concept, what it actually does, how you're able to change that, people do get behind it. People also don't like changing. People very much are stuck in their ways. So if we can present them with a solution where they really don't have to change anything that they're doing and they're able to benefit the environment, they'll do it. So at the grocery store, they're still throwing the produce away. They just have to throw it away in a separate garbage can. It's right next to the other garbage can. So it's very minimal work on their part. At the store, you have the choice between our product or a chemical product. And we are a less expensive product, so it's a very easy decision for you to make to go with the environmentally friendly product. And so really education and then making the choice as easy for them as possible. I think we're just about out of time, so maybe one last question. All right. Oh, yeah.
You said you were working and that you're going to school when you started the business. How did you manage
that? My grades dropped a fair amount. I was really, really busy, and I was so happy when I was able to quit my job. So, I probably didn't do a fantastic job at managing and balancing all of it. My social life definitely became a whole lot less fun. My grades dropped, and I was extremely busy.